Welcome to Only for Your Ears and today's episode. But before we begin, I'd like to give a big thanks to people that have liked, shared, and subscribed. This is very much appreciated. Now for today's episode, The Ugly Duckling by Hans Christian Andersen, which I've renamed as The Rebirth of a Swan's Twist of Fate. The structure will remain the same, starting off with a brief summary where I'll digress in a few highlighted sentences and then give a reflection, moving into what I call a pearl of wisdom, which is a new section. We'll move on to my critical review on how this fairy tale plays into today's society by using a film to give parallel to what happened in modern times. Then we'll move on to connecting the dots. Connecting the dots is about realizing that we had to go through certain situations in the past to be where we are right now in the present and really appreciate that. Then we'll move on to the trigger points and a conclusion. And last but not least, my quote. Let's begin now with The Ugly Duckling, or The Rebirth of a Swan's Twist of Fate. The Ugly Duckling, or A Swan's Twist of Fate, is a fairy tale by Hans Christian Andersen and tells the story of a young bird that is born in a duck's nest and is considered ugly by the other animals. I digress. Unfortunately, this is true in families. Even animals reflect some of the same attitudes based on society's standards of beauty. This is due to their strong observation and sensitivity to the surroundings. The tale follows the bird's journey of personal transformation and self-discovery, emphasizing themes of inner beauty, self-worth, and overcoming adversity. I digress. I think there's a lot of personal similarities of our soul-searching journey as a collective that rings true and holds up a mirror of how judgmental and insecure we are if everyone doesn't look or act the same way as we do, therefore rendering someone as weird instead of different. The story begins with a mother duck hatching her eggs. I digress. The momentous birthing process. One of the eggs, larger than the others, hatches last and reveals a bird that looks different from the other ducklings. I digress. During the time of extreme heating period, anything can happen. But let me be clear, swans and ducks cannot mate and produce offsprings any more than a woman and a sheep. The other animals in the farmyard ridicule and ostracize the bird because of his appearance, calling him ugly, the ugly duckling. Even his own family is unkind and critical. I digress. This is typical. Nobody wants to be responsible for giving birth to an ugly member of the family. And so the best thing that they can do is either ill-treat it or pretend it doesn't exist. The ugly duckling, feeling rejected and lonely, runs away from the farm. I digress. The swan really didn't have much choice, did it? The family of ducks forced it out. And this is his experience in different fractions of society. Throughout his journey, he encounters various animals and faces harsh weather conditions. No matter where he goes, he is continuously met with ridicule and rejection due to his appearance. I digress. Right. Here is the execution of the self-fulfilling prophecy the swan has absorbed and is reflected everywhere it goes. Despite these hardships, the ugly duckling perseveres and continues to search for a place where he belongs. I digress. Maybe the swan realizes his home is within him all along the peace of self-acceptance and empowerment. One day, the ugly duckling sees a group of beautiful swans and, despite feeling unworthy, decides to approach them. I digress. Because he realizes these swans are the reflection of who he is without knowing for sure if he will be accepted. As he does so, he catches a glimpse of his reflection in the water and realizes that he has transformed into a beautiful swan himself. I digress. This long, arduous journey was for the bird to discover himself amongst a flock of swans. The other swans welcome him, and the once ugly duckling finally finds acceptance and a sense of belonging. I digress. Our biological family isn't always our soul tribe. Our soul tribe represents a collective of people that understand you, they resonate with you, and they share similar values and beliefs. The ugly duckling serves as a heartwarming reminder of the importance of self-discovery, inner beauty, and self-worth. It encourages readers to persevere through challenges and adversity and to embrace their true selves, no matter how they may appear to others. I digress. This also teaches us to never forsake who we are as an individual just to fit in to a group's think tank. Reflection. The story highlights the consequences of unkindness and a lack of empathy towards others. The other animals mistreat and ridicule the ugly duckling, causing him great pain and suffering. This theme serves as a reminder to treat others with compassion, as one never knows the true struggles and the potential of another individual. This is so true, people. A pearl of wisdom. The painful truth is that certain people who are considered different are mistreated. And this is because, as a collective, we project our fears onto the most vulnerable in society, so we appear strong. We do this to fan away the attention to our internal damaged self. If society accepts me, then I must be okay. Reflection 2. The danger of conformity and societal expectations. The ugly duckling also explores the issue of societal expectations and pressures to conform to certain standards of beauty or behavior. The protagonist initially tries to fit in with the ducks, but ultimately realizes that he must embrace his true identity as a swan. This interpretation encourages readers to resist the pressure to conform to societal norms and to celebrate their own uniqueness and individuality. A pearl of wisdom. Number 2, standing up for our convictions is a huge challenge for individuals who dare to be themselves. The swan couldn't be anyone else but himself. And in the end, most people are pushed by tremendous internal pressure to give birth to who they really are and embrace who we should be. Wow, what a fight that is. It truly is. Reflection number 3. The central theme of The Ugly Duckling is personal growth and the process of self-discovery. The protagonist, initially an outcast and ridiculed by his appearance, eventually transforms into a beautiful swan. This transformation signifies the importance of discovering and embracing one's true identity, regardless of external circumstances. A pearl of wisdom, number 3. The metamorphosis which transforms the swan from the inside out is magical. Those long, dark days we spend using our intuitive lamp to pave the way through our muddy psyche and eliminate those self-loathing doubts and poor self-image, eventually shines from within, only to reveal the true beauty we are. Now for my critical review on how this fairy tale plays in today's society. The fairy tale was ahead of its time when written, and I think it still is today. You can see the keen and sensitive eye of this author, who came from the humble dwellings of poverty and observed various forms of outcasting of people that were deemed vulnerable, misfits, and deplorables of society. The enormous pressure of the frightened bullies of society, name-calling while standing in opposition to the dark side of their soul, is truly telling who are the real cowards and are in the authenticity of how this story is framed, and one who dares to stand in their power and principles to live to fight another day. The film we're going to use and look at is Eat, Pray, and Love. Liz Gilbert has been married for 8 years, owns a house, and has a successful career. However, despite her seemingly stable life, she feels lost and confused, longing for something more meaningful. Liz decides to ask for a divorce from her husband, Stefan, which he struggles to accept. Newly divorced and facing uncertainty, Liz embarks on a transformative journey to Italy, India, and Bali, seeking self-discovery. During her travel, Liz discovers the joys of eating Italian cuisine and discovering new traditions. She has a Thanksgiving meal there, and then she leaves for India. And in India, she joins an ashram where she learns how to pray and about the culture. And she also has to do a couple of humbling tasks like scrubbing the floor. Around this time, she learns that she wants to move on to Bali. So she moves on to Bali, and this is where the ending of her trip really climaxes. In Bali, Indonesia, Liz reunited with a friend, Ketut, a local healer, and takes on various tasks he assigns her. While cycling, she has a run-in with Felipe, a Brazilian, and seeks treatment for her injury from a local healer. Wayan, during her discovery, she meets Armenia, who encourages her to join a village festivals. There, Felipe apologizes for the accident and they strike up a conversation. Well, two things get together, and what happens is that they realize that they have a strong connection with each other, and they actually fall in love. Felipe decides to ask for her hand in marriage, and Liz immediately says no. But upon reflection, while living with him and just spending time, she starts to get fearful, and she decides to run away and not get married. She goes to a friend and she starts to speak to him, and she says, look, I'm afraid. And she's only afraid because she feels that her husband, the relationship she had with her husband, is a bad reflection on her trying to get, decided to get married again. But, sometimes we have to go through these karmic cycles. And in her connecting the dots and realizing through a help of a friend that if she hadn't divorced her husband, she wouldn't have the great fortune to meet her future husband and her true soulmate if she hadn't come to Indonesia. So everything connected, the dots connected. And in the end, she decides to come back and to marry Felipe and hopefully live happily ever after. Now, in the next section, I call it Connecting the Dots. I think there are many of us listening, especially women, that have settled into normal, traditional, and good lives without giving ourselves permission to discover who we are. And we can all relate to some of what Liz needs to do and wonder and paint her own future picture. And not everybody needs to go on a journey. Not everybody needs to go on this spiritual journey. So We sometimes try to fit into society's idea of normal, but it doesn't work for us, just like with the ugly duckling. I believe this works two ways. The first example is to give closure for ourselves, self-expression, and dreams in fear of being perceived as weird or a failure. Oops, too late for that. But no matter how hard we try to diminish our light, just like with Liz, her desire for change pushes her from the inside into making decisions she needed. And the second belongs to society's sigh of relief. They have won in the manipulation game of someone like you, Liz, me, who have followed the status quo in spite of feeling unfulfilled. The system coerces us with discouragement into thinking we should give up this wishful thinking, and in their eyes is the best thing to do. Unfortunately, projection of their insecurity mirrors a large percentage which is made up of the society, of what society really is. May I say, some scared individuals too frightened to take the chance on themselves, therefore ostracize those who do. For Liz to go on her journey of self-discovery, it must have been a huge risk for her, which she deemed a necessity. She experiences a whole new perspective of life. She finds love again. If she hadn't taken this trip, she wouldn't have found the love of her life. She finds love again, and that frightens her at first, in fear of repeating mistakes from the past. But we all have different karmic cycles to experience and complete. For men and women partnered up that have children, going on a trip of self-discovery is a bit difficult, or it's something that would take on a different form, maybe mini retreats, but sometimes you have to take that solitary spiritual walk at your own pace. Children are a wonderful life decision and not an obstacle to fulfilling our dreams. Let's move on to the trigger points now. Only one or two trigger points, actually. So for me, in the rebirth of a swan's twist of faith is the ugly duckling's coming of age and blossoming into its newfound wisdom. My rebirth took on many forms during my journey. I surprisingly was immensely spiritually productive in transmuting family, karma, and experiencing ego deaths, several, may I add, along with meaningful, deep reflective transformation. This could only have happened by experience the many losses and quite a serious illness. Just like in the rebirth of a swan's twist of fate, I had to face the ugly truth that no matter how hard I tried to be vanilla and invisibly blend into society's fabric of standards, I didn't and never would. I twisted myself into a pretzel. I became a people pleaser. I believed all the lies and the abuse that was thrown at me and turned myself into a self-loathing weakling that even the devil would despise, just to get these people to accept me. And deep down, the dirty little secret was I couldn't stand these people anyway. They also knew I would never be a replica of them. Well, I had to have the rudest awakening of all when I was slapped hard with the realization that the people in my life didn't give a damn about me, whether I was dead or alive. But upon the reflection, I was free. to rescue myself and be my own superhero, just like the Ugly Duckling did. I was literally forced to figure out life alone with enemies at my back. I walked towards my true self and an empowered soul, just waiting to be met with acceptance and a sigh of relief. God allowed me to experience a kick in my teeth by the religious kingdom, using me as a competition against the pastor who had experienced breast cancer the following year before me, only more serious. They let me know we're not backing you. This moment of truth was devastating, but I was free to discover who I am and get on with my life. Advice Corner. I learned some really good and hard truths, incredible lessons from the Ugly Duckling. But first, I'd like to say, did you know that swans are born ugly and they have to grow into their beauty over time? It's a bit like the ugly child and the awkward teenager who looks wild and out of proportion turns into the world's #1 supermodel. This is shared advice to never sacrifice yourself as a person to appease or please others. Never allow bullies, hateful words to coerce you into fitting into their group. No, never. This is easier said than done, people. For anyone going through this now, I have compassion for you. When the bullies look at you, they see their fear and insecurities projected onto you. This is true. Sometimes people see your potential before you do, and they try to block you from ever realizing your gifts. This means you should never, ever give up that glorious talent you have within. The talent they try to block is most valuable to the planet. A simple swan didn't give up, so why should you? Never give up on your principles, self-love, and the magic of who you are. Not ever. I believe Hans Christian Andersen wanted to teach this exact principle in this tale, how to fight for our identity, character, and how to love with the authenticity of who we are. Now for the ultimate pearl of wisdom. Standing up for our convictions is a huge challenge for individuals who dare to be themselves. The swan couldn't be anyone else but himself. And in the end, most people are pushed by tremendous internal pressure to give birth to who they really are and embrace who we should be. Wow, what a fight that is. I would like to finish with a small anecdote from my early dancing days. Oh, I battled myself to be just like everybody else. So I wouldn't be the ugly duckling at the Laban Center where I studied dance. The teachers knew I was different, but I think they wanted me to discover my own journey and figure it out. I thought it had to do with living in London. So when I went to dance in and live in New York, I thought I would get lost amongst the millions of people and wannabe stars there. I would fade into the background, but no such luck. A British ballet dancer called Michael Vernon stopped the class one day, and as I was going across the floor, and told me to stop trying to do the combination like everybody else. He goes, "You're not like everybody else." And I was hugely disappointed. It felt like an elephant had just kicked me in my stomach. After class, he said to me, "Melody, you're not like anybody else, and you have to learn to embrace who you are. Sure, you can do the combination like everybody else, but you're not being you. And I realized as he was speaking to me, I had a responsibility. I realized as a unique individual, not only do we have responsibility to stand up for ourselves and who we are, but we're also obligated to harness self-love and respect and the capacity to guard that special treasure that lies within that made us unique to begin with. I call her treacle, my inner child, who contains the essence of who I am. Well, that's the end of today's episode. I hope you liked it. And we're going to move on to my quote, which is, healing is a lifelong lesson, blessing, and gift we give ourselves, mind, body, and soul. Healing is a lifelong lesson, blessing, and gift we give ourselves, mind, body, and soul. Until next time, goodbye.